Welcome to my video on the 2014 movie, The Neon Demon. I'm going to start with a review of zero spoilers, and then I'm going to get into a spoiler section, which I call the thoughts section. I'm probably going to be talking pretty fast throughout this video because, as it turns out, my wrists hurt when I sit for too long doing these videos, but I'm too stubborn to completely quit, so this is the solution. Feel free to slow me down. There should still be a function in YouTube to, So, the movie's rated R, so this video B. And, I mostly love this film. I do have some issues with it. And yes, there is a reason why I'm releasing this video during Pride Month. I am not going to be able to discuss it until we get into the thought section, so that's primarily what you're here for. Feel free to skip ahead. Not sure how much the thought section is going to make sense if you haven't already watched the movie or, I don't know, I guess read wiki summary or something. Anyway, so I am going to start by briefly talking about, the core setup is that Jessie is new in town. She wants to become a model, and through that we get exploration of what it's like to be, a young woman within the modeling industry, primarily through the lens of someone who is a model, but not everyone we meet as a character is a model. The movie does a pretty good job with setup and payoff. There's at least one thing that I felt like, okay, that's probably setting something up, but I did not foresee at all what it was paying off. It is, of course, also, it's good to say here at the start, this is very much an art film, and as such, there are going to be things that are not necessarily going to make any literal sense. Like, if you interpret, if you read stuff into it, you can get something out of it, maybe. And I'm not saying that those movies are better or worse than ones that are not, art films. And, tension and suspense, this, as far as that goes, there definitely is some, but this is very much a slow burn. I've seen at least some say that they thought it was going to be like a horror movie, which, to be clear, I don't think that was a professional critic, but in some ways, horror movie, but don't expect like a traditional, I'm not sure I would even say it's elevated horror. It's, in a way, horror, but it's such a slow burn that there are going to be chunks of it where you're like, I'm sorry, has it been lit yet? The psychological accuracy is definitely an interesting thing here, because I want to really underline, this movie is not meant to be taken completely literally. It is kind of nonsensical if you do. It is either not set in the real world, or not everything that happens, even the stuff that is not revealed. Like, there is at least one dream sequence in this, but even the stuff that is not, that does not have that element to it, if you try to accept it as, okay, this happened exactly the way we're shown it, it's gonna be a little, Actually, I saw that, so I appreciate some would say that I should have already watched at least one of the Suspiria movies before doing this. I have watched video reviews and analyses of both versions of it, and I'm not ruling out maybe at some point doing it. I do find Argento fascinating, and I've heard compelling things about the remake as well. But apparently, if I recall correctly, the director of the remake said that, the director of the real remake said this is the real remake of Suspiria. And I can definitely see why. And if you know pretty much anything about Suspiria, you understand that that means, it doesn't necessarily make complete sense if you're trying to take it as this literally happened in the real world. But it definitely does try to communicate things about human psychology, and as long as you're willing to not take it literally, I think there is a lot to get out of it, but I'm also not going to pretend like it is flawless in that regard. I think, if you've been watching me for a while, just because I'm Danish does not mean that I go easy on Danish cinema. In fact, I don't know, maybe sometimes I'm a little hard on them. I know we have such potential. Every so often, I see it realized, and this one comes really, really close. Like, there's so much that I would say does work in this film. is a movie that always stays true to itself. It is not realistic, and it is not meant to be. And the level of detail, it's very interesting because in a way it's very high, but in other ways it's kind of low. Like there's a lot where we're given minimal information or context, but then there's also stuff where like they clearly put tremendous effort into the production here. And yeah, so I think that pretty much, yeah, the dialogue is, well delivered and written. It definitely helps that, I'm afraid I forget, yeah, my fucking memory is shot. But there was at least one of the actresses who worked on this who was requested to help, perfect the dialogue because the male writer and director, Nicholas Winding Refn, was not certain that it was, because it's not really a spoiler to say, the cast, like the characters here with the most screen time, there's definitely a decent number of women here. And it is very much about like the culture surrounding them within modeling. Because, I realize some people don't even think about this, but there are male models as well. Not every supermodel is a woman. And, right, I guess I should say at this point, I'm not particularly into that. Like, I don't know that much about that world, so I'm going to try to refrain from saying something just completely ignorant about it. I watched this, for the pride aspect, for Nicholas Winding Refn and the cast, yeah. Let's see. I do think they do a good job on, he's a writer-director who early in his career, like if you watch something like Bleeder, and, I try to make a case why I think a lot of people should in my video on Bleeder. That movie, there's at least one utter chatterbox in that movie, and then in this one, like, a number of the characters don't really say that much, and I mean that both literally as in their dialogue is sparse, but also in that when they do say something, when they open their mouth, it's not necessarily something particularly deep. They don't necessarily talk about things that on the surface are deep. I guess that's an oxymoron. But through how much people in this talk about things like that, a lot of it is about appearance. We can appreciate that is part of that world. And yeah, I think this is a good time to move on to the direction. So I've definitely seen some, there was at least one professional critic who said this movie was misogynist. And I'm not here to say that they are wrong about that. I think it's important to consider the context that this movie is not really meant to represent everything in the world. It's taking this very specific sliver of the world. I really didn't get the sense watching this that this is how Refn considers all women everywhere of all time. He's saying this is this specific, it's called Neon Demon for a reason. And yeah, with that said, it is definitely a movie that there are female characters here who are not the most positive representation. Now, this is a progressive channel. We support women's rights and women's wrongs. I'm not here to tell you that this movie is not misogynist, and I can absolutely imagine a lot of female feminists will find it to not really be worth it. It is very much, it is a man, I hesitate to say dipping his toe. It's more like, I'm pretty sure he thinks it's a deep dive, but a lot of female feminists will point out it's not really. Like, this is very surface level, and I guess that does bring us nicely back to the title. Yes, it means exactly what you think it means, and that is, to some extent, the level of analysis here. It is. I saw at least one critic say this is the message of the film is what you try to ignore a first-year philosophy student barraging you with on a bad first date or something along those lines, and yeah, that is absolutely, I'm not going to deny that. I think that does pretty much get us to other aspects. I'm going to discuss that in more detail, but as a lot of that discussion is going to be for the thoughts section, for reasons that are obvious to people who have or will have already watched it. Yes. So the direction, there definitely is a very assured hand. This was after he started his, I guess depending on how you see it, ascent or descent into this very arty, because once again, like, this is worlds away from Bleeder. Like, if I didn't know that these two were made by the same director, I might think, oh, well, this guy definitely watched Bleeder, but can't be the same guy. And, once again, I'm not saying that that either of these are inherently better or worse. Like, I've watched Bleeder multiple times. This is my first viewing of this, but it's not going to be the last. Anyway, this does have a, yeah, there is a certain, there's, how do I best put this? He definitely wants everything in the movie to be about this one thing, which is also part of how it can definitely read as misogynistic, because it does end up feeling like this is saying, once again, I don't think it's saying that about all women. I believe it is saying it about women in the fashion industry. And there is also to some of the men, to be clear. But it says more than once that at least within this industry, women are very shallow and beauty obsessed. And yeah, it is perhaps one of those cases where I don't think it would have been terrible if he had made like 45-minute short film, but there's not as much attention on those as feature length. Now, other than that, I think the cinematography is a good place to move on to, because that is one of the strongest aspects here. It really is, like, I've never watched anything that looks exactly like this. There's definitely some Kubrick going on, as others have noted, and this is, like, the movie practically comes right out and says that's definitely a thing about Danish media. It's true of Danish games, too. If you've played an IO Interactive game, like, it goes beyond references. They're wearing their influences on their sleeve. Like, it might as well be, a neon demon light fixture that's, blinking. This is what we're inspired by. But the cinematography, there's this really, really striking use of light. And apparently it is in part because Refn is, like, partially colorblind or something along those lines. And so it barely registers to him, or doesn't register to him, if it's not very strong. And honestly, considering that, I really appreciate that he doesn't do this for every film, because it would not have worked for Bleeder. Bleeder is a very naturalistic film, But with this, and that's part of how you can see, like, that's part of how it has this dreamlike atmosphere throughout, But yeah, and other than just the both it being, like, intense, and also the colors chosen are ones that are, like, they really get a reaction, like, you can't really miss them. Other than that, there's this one sequence that is either pitch black or what's it called again? A strobe lighting. It vacillates between these, and it's mostly just like a fraction of, I think, a fraction or maybe full second of blackness, and then the strobe light, and but it really has an impact, and it goes on for longer than you might think. And yeah, other than that, it does a really great job with just sort of the basics. Like, it breaks some rules as far as cinematography goes. I don't think I want to give away exactly how before I get into thoughts. And yeah, sometimes a shot will last, longer than you would think it would, and other times it will go really, really fast by. Other than that, the editing, they tried trimming this down as much as, Refn, I don't know, famously maybe, has said, less is more, nothing is perfect. And that is partially on display here. I mean, it's clear in Valhalla Rising, which I believe is the movie where he said it for. I'm not currently planning on doing a video on that. I don't know if I think it might be above my pay grade right now. But I think that pretty much does cover that aspect. So the production value, set design, locations, costumes, and makeup are all very impressive. Like, you get a really strong sense of who someone is based on what their, maybe you see their home, workplace, stuff like that. And they did a really great job finding the right places to film it as well. And it's, the music, there's this, it's got this sort of synthy thing going on, and sometimes it is tense, other times it is, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a movie where we're ever kind of just exhaling, like we're kind of always on edge. It's just not like constant danger necessarily, but there's something in the air always. The air is thick with tension in one way or another. The sound design is great. There are several bits that really stand out, in part because of things make exactly the noise they should. So as far as characters go, I definitely do appreciate that it, I already mentioned that the characters, that some of the female characters can come off as being very skin deep, and I think the number of characters is right. I don't think it should have had more or less, and I definitely did appreciate that it is not really shy about calling out men being creepy around conventionally attractive women, and in some cases girls, because Elle Fanning was indeed not of age while filming this, and that does, of course, make many things in this uncomfortable. And this is one of those places where I also, I'm aware not everyone knows this internationally, so I'm just going to mention that here in Denmark, the age of consent for sex is lower. I do not have sex with anyone who's under 18 myself, so I don't remember exactly what, I forget if it's 16, or is that for cigarettes? Is it 15 for sex? It makes me uncomfortable to even think about. I'm not making an excuse for the movie making that choice. I'm simply saying I think that is part of that helped inform it, but this is also one of those cases where I don't think it really would have. I'm going to come out and say it. I think it would have been better if they had indeed cast someone who was over the age of 18, even if the character is meant to be 16. I appreciate that is stated in the film, and that is one of the things in this that I feel quite confident we are meant to take completely seriously and literally. But you could have gotten the point across without it. I will say, I think, knowing what I know about Refn and Danish filmmakers in general, I don't think we're not meant to be uncomfortable. And if you cancel those out, I believe he is trying to make us uncomfortable. And I appreciate that there can be... I'm not saying that never has value. I think this is one of those areas where tiny bit more sensitivity would have gone quite a long way. Now, the cast, as mentioned, fantastic. I've been meaning to watch more Elle Fanning. If you have this idea in your head somehow that Elle Fanning is just a pretty face, she can't really act. Other than this, I would also recommend both of the Maleficent movies and Predator Badlands. You know, I have been very impressed by her in all of these. At this point, I honestly don't remember. Yeah, but I know she was in Babel, and I do remember. I know which character she played, but yeah, I guess it's been like 2 years since I watched that movie, and I don't know. She wasn't really someone I was, trying to gauge the acting talent of. You know, it's a movie with a lot of talented performers. Right now, I haven't quite decided if I'm going to do a video on that movie or not. Anyway, yeah, they do a really great job with, she and others. Yes, they're conventionally attractive, but there is also more to them, which I feel like that might sound like it contradicts my earlier statements. So once again, I'm not saying that the characters themselves necessarily say or do things that make them come across as if they have a lot of layers to them, but it is a movie that recognizes that not everyone who is conventionally attractive, in fact, maybe especially people who aren't, they are sometimes a bit mean-spirited, and to be clear, I'm not saying, this is not one of those like, oh, if they're pretty then they must be evil. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I do appreciate that it is one of the aspects of, the when young women socialize with each other, sometimes there can be bullying, and sometimes that is in fact in part about their appearance and such. Desirability, basically, which once again feels really dirty to say about a 16-year-old, but yeah. Talking about the movie, not talking about, yeah. Let's see. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think this might be the first time I see Bella Heathcote in anything. I think all I know, I'm aware that she's in at least one of those 50 Shades movies, but I try not to judge anyone who's in the, I mean, what is it? Was Kim Basinger in one of them? I know Dakota Johnson was, and I thought she was great in the what's it called again? The Bad Times at El Royale, and I don't really blame her for the movie Madam Web. I mean, was anyone particularly good in that? I didn't even think that. Like, if I'm sorry, if I can watch a movie and be like, you know what, Emma Roberts was a little underwhelming, that movie fucked up, because she's awesome in stuff like Scream Queens, anyway, I think that might just about cover the, right, obviously, Jenna Malone, another person who was, as soon as I found out she was in this, I knew I had to watch it. So yes, I have indeed been building up to watching this for like over a decade by now. She's another one of those, like, when she smiles, it's, there's, yeah, she is conventionally attractive, but she can also really, really act. And yeah, it is also, of course, honestly just kind of impressive that Elle Fanning can sell, oh, new in town, just arrived, when she's literally been acting on camera since, I don't know, just about when she was old enough to memorize and deliver lines, I guess. And they even have this thing that I'm not 100% sure if it was written specifically for it to be an in-joke, but she at one point says that she can't sing or dance, that the only thing she has is her conventionally attractive good looks. And, IMDb trivia notes, it couldn't really be further from the truth, yeah. And about the singing and dancing, I mean. Anyway, I think that might, yeah, Keanu Reeves, I continue to really appreciate when he plays just really unpleasant, like he does it so well in, recently rewatched, what's it called again? The Gift, because Send Help was coming out. I was rewatching everything Sam Raimi that I could get my hands on, even somehow managed to make it all the way through Oz the Great and Powerful, probably for the last time, only the second time. And let's see, I think, and it's also just one of those things, Keanu Reeves, also conventionally attractive. I really appreciate when conventionally attractive cishet white men acting are willing and able to play really unpleasant people, because we do need to underline how many problems are caused by conventionally attractive cishet young white men. And I'm not saying that all men or all cishet young white men. I'm talking about patriarchy and the way a lot of men are socialized, and how we need to do more to improve that socialization, and until it's improved, resist. And I think that does. Yeah. Let's see. There's also that guy. My wrist is too sore to look it up right now, but I think, what did he play on Dexter? Desmond or something? He was also quite good, and they again do the thing. He's also someone who can both. He's conventionally attractive, but he can also do this character that's kind of off-putting, and that's not a spoiler. As soon as you see him, that's the first impression you get. I'm not gonna reveal if there's more to him. I was impressed by Alessandro Nivola as well. You know, didn't love him in the Eye remake, but then that's another movie where the acting is not necessarily fantastic. And yeah, been meaning to watch him in more. I always loved him in Con Air. Why do I always fuck up Con Air and Face Off? I'm always talking about Face Off. He's not even in Con Air. Anyway, hardly anyone is in both of those movies. Like, what the fuck? I think Nicolas Cage might be literally the only person who appears in both of those movies. I do not know why I always fuck them up. Anyway, that covers that. So the pacing, once you accept that this does not move fast, and you realize that like less than a minute in, like, oh, this is one of those that, yeah. I mean, the movie's under 2 hours. I think it's actually under an hour and 50. So it's obviously like it matters if a movie is slow, and it's like, I'm not saying that it's impossible to make a long movie that's also slow and make it absolutely amazing. I've said before, I really, really love movies like Andrei Rublev and the one of his other masterpieces, Solaris, the original, not the shitty remake. I'm a great admirer of Andrei Tarkovsky. I gotta watch more of his movies. Anyway, those movies are like 3 hours and slow moving. But this movie, I would definitely say, and I'm not the first person to note this, at least one professional critic said this, it goes on for at least a little longer. I would say I spent maybe the last 10 minutes wondering, isn't the movie over now? Like, what is even left? And then it dawned on me, oh, this is what it is. And I did feel like it took longer than it needed to get to, because like, yeah, there at the end, I felt like there's only so many places you can go here. And so I guessed one, and it turned out to be that one. And yet it took minutes for them to just get there, when really it could have happened immediately after the thing that felt like the natural endpoint. With that said, it's not, I didn't feel like my time was wasted. Anyway, I think, I think it is one of those things where you might want to, if you're not familiar with Danish cinema, there is this, in some ways, when, sometimes, not always, there are Danish films that are like the four quadrant, I think it's called, very, very kind of, yeah, crowd pleasing kind of thing, But sometimes Danes will make a movie where it's like, well, they made a movie, you are the audience, you paid to watch this movie, give it a chance, What was it? Outlaw Vern put it really well. It's about watching a movie, not watching a movie with crossed arms, like, okay, movie, what the fuck you got? And more like, okay, let me just, I'm here, movie, do your thing, I'm open to it. And that is not to say that there's something wrong with not liking a movie. I'm saying, if you don't feel like you are in the latter camp, this might just not be your kind of movie. I guess it might not be the worst thing to mention. I recently rewatched Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, the I can't believe I'm blanking on what year did that come out again? The one with, now I can't even fucking remember her name, even though I'm a fan of hers. It stars one of the two leads from the original Lemony Snicket movie, the 2004 movie. Anyway, yeah, that felt like inappropriate. I hadn't even planned on it, really, but yeah, serendipity doodah. And yeah, the effects and stunts, I'm not gonna say how much there is, but there's at least one of each, and they are very well done. And yeah, so as far as, if one wishes to read this as horror, then it is largely psychological horror. But with that said, there are a couple of places that are very, very scary. And yeah, I would definitely say whenever it goes for being, genuinely disturbing, it absolutely succeeds. And this is definitely one of those cases where I've seen at least one person say that it felt shocking for the sake of it. And that, listen, I really want to underline, I'm absolutely not saying that it is wrong to feel that way about this movie. I do want to say that as a Dane, that is a thing in yeah. So there's several things here. I want to underline, I definitely do not deny. Sometimes we Danes, I myself included, will say something shocking for his own sake. We are not necessarily above trolling or rage bait or that sort of thing. But in my experience, when there is something very shocking in a Danish art film, and I'm not saying that's exclusive to Danish art film, that is, there are a lot of art films that will have something shocking, and it is to convey something. You might say that it will have the subtlety of a freight train sledgehammer to the nards, but it is there not only to shock. And I definitely didn't feel like anything in this was just shocking for the sake of it. And yeah, that does pretty much cover. So yeah, I rate this 8. Well delivered, in part because of the cinematography and editing and acting and writing and direction, but somewhat, not the deepest comments on modeling industry. Kind of, first thing that comes to your head if you start looking at it critically, out of 10. And that brings us to the thoughts section, starting now. So from here on out, I'm spoiling absolutely everything about this movie. So let's immediately cover the pride aspect. So yes, this does have some sapphic stuff, and it is definitely one of those cases where, and I have noticed that this is a thing that sometimes, sorry for shaking the camera, sometimes male directors, when they comment on women, will do this thing of having like something that is not heterosexual kind of be a way to communicate, oh, look at this, just out of control kind of thing, and that's really fucked up. That's such a horrendous trope. There is a possible interpretation of this movie as saying that if you, as a woman, turn down a lesbian who's very aggressively trying to sleep with you and really refusing to take no for an answer, to the point where you have to get physical, then she will help kill and consume you. And once again, I do not think that that is literally what we are supposed to take from it. I get that it is meant to, and I say get because I don't think it's difficult to, I'm not patting myself on the back here. But yeah, obviously one of the things they're doing here is, yeah, if you don't have a support system and you enter a one of these businesses that are very shallow, the established ones will eat you up. It makes it completely literal. And I think that making it so literal is part of why is like, I mean, I'm sorry. Hopefully there's not oh shit. QAnon, I guess, maybe. All right, and I'm willing to acknowledge, some fucking shit in the Epstein files is yeah. But it's, most of us know that the average person is not going to just go out and kill and literally eat and bathe in the blood of someone, under pretty much any circumstances, really, but especially for turning down sexual advances, And, yeah, that, right. And also, the necrophilia is also, it's one of those things of like, I think the movie would probably have been stronger if it had men participate in this as well. Like, it's not saying that it's only women, but it does feel like there's perhaps an undue level of focus on women engaging in this. And to be clear, I'm not saying that women cannot be very intense with each other to the point of, sometimes, like, great psychological or bodily harm. But, I don't think it was quite enough, because they do the thing where the Nivola character says, beauty's not the only, beauty's not everything, it's the only thing. You wouldn't even have given her a second look if she was not conventionally attractive, and the person you are, the person who's had a lot of work done, you're describing as fine. Which is also one of those things of like, I can't quite tell if, so there's at least one man who doesn't seem to understand that obviously a guy sitting right by his girlfriend being asked to rate the appearance of another girl, like, if he cares enough about his girlfriend, I mean, unless, I don't know, some people are okay with that, but a lot of guys, they're not gonna say if they find the other woman attractive, they're not going to say it in front of their girlfriend, and I can't tell if it's the Nivola character or if it's Refn who doesn't understand that. But yeah, obviously, we see the way she reacts. I believe that's Heathcote. We see she really does not like that this is happening, and I appreciate that the shot make it clear it's, I mean, it would be bad enough if it was just the five of them. There's at least a few other people there, and they're watching that, so yeah. I think that might just about cover everything sapphic. Let's see. Yeah, see, for example, yeah, both I mean, I think the consuming, I don't think that it's inherently completely wrong to put here. I think, using cannibalism is one of those things, it's going to get people talking, and hopefully most of them go beyond, wow, that was gnarly, and start talking about, like, it as a metaphor. Even if they don't think it's the best metaphor, at least the conversation has gotten going. And I do get the sense of a number of Danish films that it's mostly to get the conversation going, more than necessarily feeling like you personally can contribute a lot. Maybe that says a lot about my videos as well. And let's see, what was the other thing? There was definitely one more thing. Right. So yeah, the consumption, the both, yeah. So the necrophilia, I think, maybe should have been both men and women, or maybe it should have been exclusively men engaged, or just one man, for example. The cannibalism, for obvious reasons, that does kind of need to be women, because the idea, it's the mana idea. You consume something strong to get their strength, and this industry will eat you up. That's the, yeah. And I think the cannibalism, it's right that it is women. I also really appreciate that, honestly, when I wasn't sure how much they were going to show. I think they did a good job because, like, the image of, you've got Jenna Malone in a bathtub full of blood and with blood on her, and you've got the other two with blood on their bodies and they're in the shower, completely nude. That gets it across, and then later she vomits up one eyeball, and we see, the other model eat that. That's enough. Like, we don't actually need to see consumption of, obviously it's going to be faked, but, what looks like human flesh. I think that would have just been distracting, frankly. Then that would have been all that people could talk about. And listen, I've given positive reviews to zombie media. It's not like I'm saying that we can't ever show that kind of thing. Anyway, I think that does pretty much bring us to, yeah, I think the consumption should have been, there should have been a man watching it and encouraging it, have something about, maybe have one of the women like start to hesitate and then have the guy say, you've done this 1,000 times before, and I know because I watched you do it. You're gonna do this or you're not gonna work again, or something like that. Just listen, that would not be any more on the nose than the movie already is. So I think that is what I'm going to say here up front. And yeah, so other than that, there is I'm gonna go. So I'm trying not to sit for too long, so I'm not sure I'm gonna say. I'm gonna try to say the stuff I think is most significant about the movie. Might not cover every single scene. So with the opening, this was a shot that I did actually consider talking about in the spoiler-free review, but I decided, it's a little bit too much. But yeah, first and last, we see, the very first time we see her, she appears dead. The very last time, she is dead. And I don't think it's accidental that when we see her with some kind of, sometimes it is makeup, but, or it's always makeup, rather, but I mean, sometimes it's makeup on the face or that sort of thing. But if something is on her that is not, I don't know, more or less traditional makeup, I guess you'd say, then it is either gold or blood. And obviously, in both cases, it's not literally, I don't know, maybe some of the gold on her face is gold, but it looks like gold, and that is definitely significant. It goes with this Narcissus reference of kissing the mirror. But it is about just beauty. It is not, beauty and violence. Those are the things. Like the very first shot features beauty and violence, like sex and death, essentially. And I really appreciate that at the very start, we can't tell, like the first thought you have about this guy is, oh, he just killed her. And only, then the camera starts pulling out and we see, oh, it's staged. And then we see he's got a camera, there's lights behind him, That is, again, obviously very intentional. And I feel like there's going to be a bunch of people that probably already have been who are going to stop the movie at that point because it's like, you know what, this is too much. This is just so obvious, like, we get it, Fashion will end up killing. It will be her death. It was that thing, die young, leave a good-looking corpse, or half of one in some cases. And that, let's see. Yeah, so I think the next thing is when she is. Yeah, so she. Let's see. She talks to. That's when she meets Jenna Malone, who is introduced staring, and does apologize, but does also pursue her. Which, again, arguably sapphic, but it might also just be the thing of, the beauty. And I do appreciate that they underline it's not only the models, Jenna Malone does makeup. I have no idea if anyone in real life does makeup both for corpses and photo shoots, but, she does in this movie, and there is an obsession with just people's looks within that world. And I'm also obviously not saying that there's nothing good about that world. And I think that does, honestly, this is decent enough time to briefly recommend. I haven't watched the second one. Maybe I will at some point. But the first, Devil Wears Prada, really great movie. And helped me appreciate fashion more. Anyway, I think that does bring us nice. So yeah, she, the from right away, clearly, Jenna wants to help Jesse, Ruby wants to help Jesse, and by the end it seems like maybe it was primarily for her own, for Ruby's sake, not Jesse's sake. And I think the next thing is when Jesse goes to the model agency, I think, and Christina Hendricks, who, if I understand correctly, used to be a model, and she's another example of, this is really a movie that underlines. Oh shit! Did I already say that? I said it for Elle Fanning. I forget if I said it for others, but yeah, conventionally attractive, good looks does not mean that you can't also act. And Christina Hendricks is someone I want to watch in more stuff. I've heard so many good things about her. I think, God, this might actually be the first thing I see her in. I really want to watch more stuff. I am considering Mad Men, but right now I'm not making any promises on that one. Anyway, yes, so that brings us nicely to, you have the thing about, she says she's not, no one's going to believe that she's actually 19, and Hendricks says it's too obvious to say 18, and Hendricks says people will believe what we tell them to believe when you tell me what to tell them to believe. And that is, again, of course, shining bright neon sign, this is the message. And people don't look below the surface in this world, in the world of modeling. And she's told that was amateurish photography, but you have, you're going to be, and also appreciate, they're all good, but for second, there we go. We can see on her face, Elle Fanning's like, oh shit, is this a really elaborate way of telling me I suck? But then she says, you're gonna be great or fantastic or something like that, and so she talks to Dean, and she claims that his photography just didn't come up, which, so they are making it clear she isn't really looking to, like, she doesn't want to hurt anyone, she can get, like there are times, she makes the choice when Dean says, I think we should go, she says, then you go, so eventually she does start to go more into this world. I think that is when the party, I guess the party happened before the meeting with Christina Hendricks, but where she meets Heathcote and Gigi. I'm pretty sure Gigi's the other. Those are two different ones anyway. And we have the thing about, what's yours? How about fuck off? Damn. And they talk about and we have the Kubrick reference, red rum, like, that's very, very clear. And it is also a red bathroom, and by the end of it, someone has killed someone else. So it's, I think that's not a spoiler for The Shining, to be clear, because we are told quite early in that film that there has been death and violence. Anyway, I think that does bring us nicely to, so we have the thing about, the is that your real nose? You're lucky. I've had work done. And then she goes over all the different things. Or wait, was that later? I think it might be later that she whatever. At some point, she talks about all the different work she's had done. And then she said, Dr. Andrews says that I'm the bionic woman. And then we get the killer line. Is that a compliment? Yikes. That stings. And let's see. I think the next thing is when she gets back home. And there is the... is that when there's that? Yeah, so let's see. She opens the door, and genuinely very effective. Like, all we see is a shape moving in darkness, but it's really, really, like, the pit in my stomach just, and so she closes the door and goes down there, and she's about to call the police until he finally comes out. So we're seeing this thing of, like, I mean, dude, I feel like this is literally part of your job description. Like, fuck me. If you are running a place like that, just, fuck landlords, if you're running wait, shit, I guess, is it a landlord if you're, shit, I don't remember. I'm extremely fortunate to have a completely different relationship to my living situation. I feel really, really bad for people who are stuck struggling with a fucking landlord. And I'm very much, I believe very much in this idea that maybe we shouldn't have anyone who just makes money just off owning something. Like, if you're not producing something, why are we paying you? Like, okay, I believe in UBI. I appreciate that let's see. I believe that as of yet, it has not 100% been worked out. We don't have a perfect solution for it yet, but I think it is something that we could work our way towards. But beyond that, I mean, I don't think someone should make extra money just from owning something if they're not producing something. And the fact she tells him there's someone in my room, and he's just like, are you high? I mean, I feel like if she was, that's even more reason to make sure there's not someone in her room that she doesn't want there. And the suddenly the key doesn't work, and they have to kick in the door, and that was like a second where I was like, there's the 1990s reffin'. And right, apparently this is the one, well, not the only, but this is one of the movies that Refn's wife likes, and I can absolutely understand why. But yeah, opens the door, and the light doesn't work, which also feels like something that he should maybe be like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I'll fix it. I'll make sure to get that fixed. Like, he's not an electrician, so he's gonna have to get someone to get that fixed. But yeah, once again, feels like something that's his job. And let's see, it's also just like genuinely the fact that Keanu Reeves, he's someone, sometimes he's just like a big teddy bear, you just want to hug him, you just want to be friends with him. And then other times he's this really intense, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, I don't want to meet that guy. Like, not even just in a dark alley, nowhere. And he's also very intense in Street Kings, one of my favorites of his. Anyway, yeah, so they, and the flashlight comes up. There's your problem. You got a mountain lion in here. You know what? I'm so sorry, Jesse, but the contract is specifying no pets. And he says, she's going to have to pay for it because, emotional damage. And later, Dean goes there and he says, I don't think she should have to pay. And then, ends up with him giving away all the cash he has, because I think at first he says like 100 or something, and then sees, oh, this guy has more, maybe it's 200. All I have is 140. Deal. You're so lucky. That's exactly what it cost. When did you become so cool? And let's see, yeah, I think, so basically it's a movie where we start with Jesse and Dean both basically being good people who just want, they think this world is for them. And by the end, she has decided to stay, which gets her killed, and he has decided to leave, or at least he, left that one situation. And he's okay by the end. And yeah, so I don't love this thing of, so yeah, there's a couple of different things here. So obviously I appreciate this, like, calling out that, it is dangerous for a young woman to not have a support network. That is something that a lot of misogynistic men, I mean, I guess it's not that all of them don't understand. There's just a lot of them who don't care or don't want her to have one. And you don't have to take my word for it. Some of them outright say that they do want for a woman to, they think a man should be the only way, a romantic couple with a man should be the only way for a woman to get by, and he should be able to just kick her out on the street from one second to another. She should be perpetually scared that he's going to do that. But one of the things here is that it ends up being other women who do it. And yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that, so it's essentially a mutual decision. Like, she says that she's not going to go with, but he also doesn't really check up on her there at the end, and she feels safer around Ruby than around him. She's the one that is cold, which I also appreciate. Like, I am aware there is a psychological phenomenon where, because like she's afraid of one man harming her. There are a number of women who in that situation will not call a different man, but instead a woman. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong to do one of these things. Like, ideally we all have a support network that can help, and yeah. Now, yeah, really, really glad. And that's again where I feel like, if the movie really wanted to go for shocking, we don't even see the girl in 214 who's described as Lolita, because the movie couldn't limit itself to just one Kubrick reference. Verbal, I mean, obviously there's also some visual ones. But yeah, it does indeed sound like maybe she's being murdered in there. There's no reason for us to see that, because it's not about that. It's about the effect it has on Jesse, and the fact that trying to escape actually gets, what's that saying, from the frying pan into the fire or something like that, Yeah, I think the next bit was so yeah, we have the triangles. 3 triangles in a shape that makes a fourth sort of appear, which you could read as like horns and a goatee. Yeah, that is of course the neon demon. She sees it, I guess it's just 2 different scenes, but it's very clear, there is something there. And also, I do not think it's accidental that when she is being exposed, like viewed and photographed or viewed by a very large crowd, she's either in complete pitch black with maybe some strobe lights and such, or in a white void. There is nothing else visible, and they underline how alone she is, And right, apparently, originally the licking of the mirror, that was like an ad lib, which Keanu saying 214 got to be seen also was. But yeah, let's see, and also the point about, so listen, extremely uncomfortable, but yeah, there are people who will look at 13-year-olds and talk about their appearance. And, I think it's significant that this is not, this is like a landlord. He's not like in modeling. Like, I don't know. I'm not the right person to talk about whether or not teenagers should be modeling. Like, obviously it shouldn't be sexual at that age, but like if they're modeling some, I don't know. I'm not qualified to speak on it, so I'm not going to. But if it was one of the, like, hypothetically, maybe Nivola came by and he was like, 13-year-old, I mean, I actually do have something that I need a 13-year-old, That was also, what was the, I think it's near the end where Nivola, no, that's not Nivola, that's Desmond from Dexter. He says, I can use you, or something like that. He doesn't say, I'd like to photograph you. It is very much a movie about exploitation of women, especially by men within this world. They are, habitually objectified. People talk about their appearance. They don't really talk about her dreams. And, she also says that she doesn't really have other prospects, because she doesn't have talents. But she was in Georgia, and the one thing she tells us about Georgia is the moon looked like an eye and she wanted to be seen. So, and that is, it's one of those things where I wish that they would just have had something more in there about, like, even in Georgia, people would objectify her and say, oh, you look so good, but it sounds a little bit like it comes from herself. Like, I don't know. I hope not very many people watch this and took from it, because I hope at least that that's not what Refn meant. But one could interpret this as just, it's natural for women to just focus on their appearance and just want to be perceived as nothing else than good looking. And that's just not, like, no, that's something that's part of culture, but we can change the culture because we, our ancestors made the culture. We helped shape the culture. We can change that culture. I myself have had so many intellectually stimulating conversations with women. It's, yeah. Now, I think that does bring us to the they do a good job establishing and building the jealousy. The established, fear being replaced by Jesse, and you have the thing about like you're in my seat, and then so you're actually going to be the last in the show, and the thing about like, hey, I'm just the messenger. You said to come talk to me. And and also the fact that she's clearly uncomfortable about being naked, but she feels like she doesn't really have a choice if she wants to make it in this. And we also have the line about like he doesn't do he doesn't do test photographs. I guess he does now. Well, he still takes pictures of me all the time. These little things, and yeah, the thing about like going to a restaurant and then asking to hear the specials because they work so hard to memorize them. So they're rude to service employees. And then you have the thing about like, so could I replace the food item with another fruit cup? And then she's like, no, if you want that much fruit, you'll have to ask for the fruit bowl. We'll have fruit cups, specifically just saying, listen, I have the power in this situation. I pay you, so you're going to do what I say. And if you get in trouble with your boss, that's not my problem, which once again, I just wish they would underline that's also how a lot of men who have power behave. I acknowledge that there are women with power who do it. But yeah, I think that does bring us nicely to the... Let's see. Right, it's really cool that Nivola ended up having such a large role, because apparently originally he was supposed to have a much smaller role, but they shot it all in sequence, so it actually, he was unavailable for the earlier role, and so he got this larger role, and instead, apparently the mustache was like, I think, was a contractual thing, and I almost said congratulatory thing, and like, I agree with, I forget who noted it, but someone noted it actually really adds to the character, and absolutely. Yeah, I think that does bring us to the part with the... Let's see. So it's the... God damn it. There's the... No, yeah, I guess that pretty much... I'm not sure there's much left to talk about other than the very ending. Right, we also have the bit of jealousy with the, I don't actually think there's room for two people here, and they sit nearby, and then we have the so I think, right, the corpse molestation was apparently also originally scripted to be much less, and I forget who decided. Was it Jenna maybe? But someone decided, that no, it should go much further. And it does really get the point across, One thing, so I can never remember if it's only transphobes who use the term autogynephilia, but I mean, technically autogynephilia, the literal meaning is just being sexually attracted to the idea of yourself as a woman, and I feel like that is what's happening with the mirror licking, and in general the way that the model, Jenna, Heathcote, and Gigi, the way they're attracted to Jesse does feel like that sort of thing. Like they are attracted to the idea. So, this, I would say, especially by the very ending, once you retroactively adjust how you perceive all their interactions, like they want to, she even said, people would do everything to look like a second grade version of me, that is what it's about. They want to be her, and she thinks they can't be. And we have the line about her being dangerous, and I thought that maybe there at the end, like maybe that was that, because I don't get the sense that this is the first time they've consumed a human being, but it is evidently the first time that it's been this much of a problem, because she ends up suiciding over it, and maybe, most of them would not describe themselves as dangerous and thus aren't. And then specifically with her, it kills, and it's unclear if it will also kill this other model, but like, yeah, I feel like there's certain chance that it will, and we're meant to take it as like, even seeing that it's necessary, like the other one couldn't even survive this, she still does it because that's the obsession with beauty. And I absolutely do appreciate, it is very important to call out, it is actually self-destructive, like literally. For this, I'm not specifically talking about like modeling or such, but being obsessed with always looking young and, yeah, conventional attractive and such. Like, I can never remember his real name, but he apparently now goes by Blueprint Brian, I think. I think he's a really good example of, it's not purely, it's not just women. It's, a number of people will obsess over, like, I don't really have much to add to the conversation about him because I don't know, I think everything I would have to say has already been said by better, larger YouTubers here on the left. So I'll just note that, yeah, with him, we're saying, as others have noted, like, what kind of life is this? Like, you're gonna spend the next decades, the rest of your life, living like this, with everything being based on, having to extend your life. And what are they even gonna learn? Like, is everyone who wants to live forever gonna take all of these different, like, you need, if listen, if you had like 10 different supplements and 10 different people, and all of them take one supplement each, and then you have a control group, then you can get something out of it. But like, this is there's not going to be anything other than like maybe all of the, is it the combination? Is it one thing? What if some of these things actually kind of counteract each other? It has no actual scientific value, and yeah, I think that does pretty much cover. Let's see. I'm just real quick going to mentally fast forward through the entire movie just to make absolutely certain that I've gotten everything said that I really wanted to. And yeah, I think that is it. So yeah, I am just real quick going to give some recommendations for other YouTube videos. So let's see, it is, yeah. So Russell Brand, An Autopsy by Lily Simpson. The Adult Industries Keyword Secret by Keyword Collective. Filmjoy, Every Movie I Saw in 2025 Ranked. Elvis Menezes, Why It's Time to Say Goodbye to Kingpin. Edgier Than Thou, Adult Man, White Nights from Matt Walsh. And Elliot Sang Again, The Wasian Problem. And yeah, in closing, I did just want to note, so after she is rejected, but pre-murder, premeditated murder, we have her, so Ruby goes to, write the, yeah. Before I say that, I did also want to note, so, I mean, I don't know, was that maybe the Keanu Reeves character in there in room 214? Because like, he's the only person we heard refer to. Like, I definitely don't think it's supposed to be Dean in there. Yeah, I don't know, because like, listen, that's, again, I'm not saying everyone, but some people who will make sexual comments about minors will eventually act on them, and that's also a thing that's very important to get across. But then again, I'm not 100% certain if that is meant to be him or if that's just me trying to, yeah, I don't know who else it would be. I guess it could be it's not anyone we know at all. It could also just be communicating that it's a really dangerous world. She also doesn't have a support network, and yeah, but yeah, so Ruby goes, she gets her lipstick, and yeah, so she draws two crosses and then a circle around them, and later, Jesse sees it, and there's a bit more of like circles and crosses on that thing, and I think it's maybe meant to be like a face. Oh, is that her like summoning the neon demon maybe so they can consume her? I did think it was really the entire chase bit there at the end, really tense and suspenseful. You know, are we having a party? And then, you know, attack and kitchen, two knives, and because there's three of them, they managed to corner her, surround her, and, you know, yeah, the thing I mentioned in the spoiler review, you know, this goes for both let's see, that's where we get the stunt. One of the effects, another is the eyeball, and the gnarly sound, you know, and the setup and payoff. I wasn't sure how it was going to pay off for, you know, the fact that she's standing there on the edge, and the things she's describing are actual things like starve. Like there are young women who have ended up starving themselves to death because, you know, culture had told them they have to look a certain way. We really have to improve that. Yeah, you know, she does end up at the bottom of that pool. And later she lies on the grave and she sprays the area of the pool that has blood, I think, is meant to. And let's see, yeah, I guess, let's see, there's at least one more thing that I really wanted to make sure to say, and it was the, yeah, I definitely think there's something to the fact that, you know, basically she feels like she's untouchable, you know, and trusts Ruby too much, and Ruby perceives it as sexual. And yeah, see, I definitely think the movie would have been better if one of the people who got violent was, on account of having their sexual advances turned down, was male. And I think that does, yeah. So, like I said, I get the sense that the mirror lipstick crosses and circles, that's like, it's meant to be a face, maybe part of a ritual to summon the neon demon so they can consume her mana. That or Ruby just really does not comprehend the rules of tic-tac-toe.